Are you empathic? Are you one of those types of people that like you kind of take on other people's feelings and it can be somewhat difficult to distinguish their feelings from yours, and it can get overwhelming and confusing, and maybe you just want to get out of everybody else's feelings and just enjoy your own experience for once? It was a very common experience with people who are really empathetic. So what I'm going to do today, talk about where this really comes from, what's actually happening, and why it's not empathy that's the problem. Because a lot of people blame empathy for this. They say, oh, I'm too empathic, or I'm too sensitive, or I'm too whatever. But it's not that you're too anything, it's that you're actually missing something really important. So what I'm going to talk about today is what exactly you're missing, how to integrate it, why this thing is missing in the first place, and just kind of uncover all the really good shit about this topic so that you can still be sensitive and attentive to your environment and the people in it without losing yourself and your ability to self-govern and self-orient and all that sort of. So let's get into it. So first, let's start talking about like what even is empathy in the first place, right? Like it's become this kind of mystified thing where people call themselves empaths, and it's this like identity thing where like you feel other people's feelings and it's almost like a badge of honor, but then at the same time people complain about it because they say that like, oh, I'm too sensitive and I take on other people's feelings and I don't know what I'm feeling and blah, 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 blah. So it's this weird thing where people are both proud of it and at the same time very aware of the problems that it causes. And everybody to some degree is empathic, at least a little bit, because we have these things called mirror neurons. And mirror neurons basically allow you to kind of understand what someone else is thinking and feeling through body language. And that's essentially kind of where empathy comes from. It's like you kind of see what somebody else is doing and you can imagine why you might do that. And it happens on the unconscious level and allows you to understand why people are doing what they're doing. Everybody has mirror neurons. Some people are just a little bit more attuned than others. And this is where the problem really comes from. Because if you're the type of empathic person that kind of loses your own experience and gets inundated with everybody else's shit, then what probably happened to you is at some point in your development, you decided that it was better to kind of ignore your own experience and be hyper attentive to those around you for whatever reason. I had to do this because when my dad died when I was really young, my mom got depressed. My dad or my brother and my mom would fight all the time. And so I learned as the youngest sibling and the baby of the family, he was 8 years old, I learned that if I just tune into everybody else, I can stop all the fights. I can make everybody laugh. I can make my environment a hospitable environment for me to live in. If I essentially forget about myself, tune into everybody else, make sure they have what they need, I can create an environment that feels at least somewhat safe and stable to me, and I'm actually able to live in it. And this is what happens a lot of times, right? Like if you have parents that are kind of like mean or abusive or something like that, being hyper tuned into them to the point where you lose yourself can help you kind of predict all the ways in which you might be in danger and steer clear of them and all these sorts of things. Now, this isn't what happens 100% of the time, but it happens enough of the time to where it's at least worth acknowledging. So if you're the type of person where you're kind of losing yourself in other people's feelings, you have to assume that you're doing that on purpose on some level. Because actually, there's an energetic line between where I end and you begin. And it's this line that allows me to do my coaching. Because I'm aware of my shit over here, and it's like, cool, here's how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. This is my experience. And then on the other side of this line is the client's experience, whoever I'm talking to, right? And it's that interaction that allows me to be a good coach because I know what's on my side. And then as I'm feeling what's on their side and I feel the interaction between the two, it gives me so much information to work with that I can understand what's going on with the person while staying in my own autonomy, not taking on their emotions and being able to lead them calmly because I haven't actually taken on their emotions. Because I don't really even think that's a thing. I don't think you actually take on other people's emotions. I think you just completely push away yours. So where all that's left is theirs because you wanted to be attuned to it. And if that's the case, you have to understand that that's protecting you from something, right? It's like, I'd rather be tuned into everybody because that makes me safer than if I were to care about myself, right? Like I've also gone through periods in my childhood where I wasn't kind of really allowed to have needs or wants or anything like that because I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. So a lot of things I wanted to do, I couldn't do. So I had to hide all of my stuff and put all of my stuff away in order to make sure that there was peace in the household. I had a place to live and my mom didn't fucking hate me because she had kicked me out of the house. So it was like, I knew that was on the table. So it was like, you got to be a good boy. So you kind of like put away your stuff and do what you need to do in order to maintain safety. And when you're doing that, you're protecting yourself from something, right? Because if you're creating safety from something, it's like, well, what's the thing you're creating safety from? And that's the big question here, right? It's like, okay, so if I'm so attuned to everybody else, what would happen if I stopped doing that? What am I afraid of? Why am I so hyper-focused? What do I think will happen if I don't? And I want you to seriously take a moment to ask yourself that question. And I want you to do that. Go grab a piece of paper and write this down. Like, this is the journal prompt, right? If I were to stop hyper-focusing on other people and actually start paying attention to my experience, what might happen? Right? And when you're asking this question, it's really important to not listen to smart, insightful, wise answers, right? Because this is some scared, very young part of you that programmed this part of your mind. So the answers probably aren't going to make sense. They're going to be emotional, they're going to be irrational, and you might not like them very much, but those are the answers regardless. So when you ask questions like this, you want to listen for the hurt, scared, tiny, really young version of you to answer, because that's the answer that really matters. And you're probably going to get something like, oh, I don't know, like if... Hold on, I'm gonna itch on my That was bugging me for like the last 20 seconds. Holy shit, new man. Okay, where was I? So what happens when you ask these questions is the part of you that knows the answer can come to the surface. And you may get something like, if I take care of myself and not everybody else, I'll be bad. If I take care of myself and not everybody else, I'll get in trouble, I'll get hurt, I'll be unsafe in some way or another. And then once you know that, you've understood why you've hidden your experience. Because again, this is all that really happens, right? Like, there is a line between you and me, and there's a line between you and whoever else you talk to for the rest of your fucking life. There's where my energy comes from and the extent to which it extends beyond me. And then there's the energy that you create and the way that it extends beyond you. And our energies intermingle. That's just how it goes. We each have our own energetic field, and they interrelate with each other. And when you can stay aware of your side of the field, you don't take on other people's stuff. You just become aware of it in relationship to yourself. And like I said before, if that capacity has been buried or anything like that, you have a reason for it. And when you can address those reasons, then you can start to stand up strong with both your feet on the ground, be able to listen to other people's shit, not take it on, and stay in your own autonomy. And so like I said before, this has been a huge element of my coaching, right? I've been doing this for like 11 years, and I have never taken on anybody's feelings. And I've coached people through everything you can possibly imagine. Through like, I have coached lawyers that prosecute really awful people and have to look at really, really, really terrible images that revolve around bad things happening to kids. I've heard some of the worst stories you can possibly imagine in my 11 years of coaching. And I've helped people through the immensely painful things that are really even hard to describe. And I never take them on because I always see it as, this is what you're feeling, this is what I'm feeling, and then this is the way that they relate. And then as soon as I'm off the phone, I'm still in what I'm feeling. I'm remembering how what they felt made me feel, but it's not mine. It's just like, yeah, that really sucked. Like, wow, that was an interesting thing to be close to. Yeah, I feel a little strange as a result of being close to that. Maybe I need to give myself a little bit of love. Maybe I need to go on a walk or anything like that. But I never take them on to the point that they're mine because I don't want to do that. What I want to do is stay in my own autonomy so that I can be there in the space between the two of us and be as of most help as I possibly can. And so the last point that I want to talk about when it comes to this empathy thing is the difference between feeling other people's feelings and taking responsibility for their feelings. Because those are completely separate things, right? Like I said before, when I'm coaching, I stay on my side. If somebody's feeling something, I don't assume it's my fault that they're feeling that. I don't assume that it's my job to do anything about it, even though technically it is. But I don't see it as like a pressure or obligation, right? I see it as like, oh, gee, I wonder what's going on here. I wonder how I can help. I wonder, if I can understand this. And if I can, then maybe I can help them understand it. And then maybe we can get somewhere. And it's just kind of this like fun exploration rather than this like, oh my God, they're hurting. Like, I can't allow this to happen. I have to do something about it. It's as if this feeling is mine. And if this isn't relieved, then I'm because that's, again, just probably another version of this enmeshing thing, where it's like if you have a parent and they're upset or whatever, and them being upset could lead to bad things happening to you. There's this feeling around, it might as well be mine. I have to do something about this. If I don't do something about this, I'm screwed. And that's taking responsibility for somebody else's feelings and treating them as if your own because the impact is shared. And that's different than actually having their emotions as yours. You can grab onto them and hold to them because, like, I need to deal with this because if I don't deal with this, but that doesn't actually make it yours. It just means that you've taken something from somebody else because you think you need to address it. And so if you're taking responsibility for other people's emotions as well as feeling them, then just know that that's just another attempt at control. It's another attempt at taking care of yourself. And all you need to do is take a couple deep breaths and ask yourself, like, okay, why am I taking responsibility for other people's shit? What would happen if I didn't? Like, if I just did what I wanted to do and I just told the truth about what I think and what I feel, like, what bad things might happen to me? What am I actually afraid of? You can listen for the kind of irrational answers that may not make sense and you may not like all that much. Those are going to be the answers that come from the really scared parts of you that are going to help you understand what needs to be done, right? Because it's like, just to make a real concrete example, it's like, okay, I take on other people's feelings because I'm afraid that if I don't and I miss something, I'll get in trouble. It's like, okay, got it. So you're afraid of being in trouble. What about being in trouble is so bad? It's like, oh, when I get in trouble, I feel like I'm bad and I don't get to do all these things and, mom or dad are mean to me and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, great. So instead of taking on all their feelings, because that worked when we were kids, what's a better way to deal with this as an adult, where we actually have a little bit more agency in our environment? Because the thing you got to understand is these strategies make perfect sense for children because children have no agency. Children have no control over their environment. So if you have a parent who's kind of like got a bad temper, it makes sense to tune into them because you can't leave. There's nothing you can do. You can't tell them to stop. You have no authority. There's nothing you can do other than tune in and try and mitigate your experience as best you can. Thank yourself for coming up with a strategy that worked when you were a kid, but just know that now that you're out of that environment with a little bit more agency, you can start to reassess how you're doing things and find a better way. Right? So it's like, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to get in trouble. I'll feel bad. Someone will be mad at me and all these bad things will happen. It's like, cool. Okay, well, if somebody gets mad at you and tells you that you're bad and in trouble or whatever, it's like, I'll be here to love you. I'll make sure you're okay. And then I'll make sure to ask if we've actually done anything truly and genuinely bad or wrong. If we have, I'll take responsibility for it, clean it up and do whatever I got to do. If not, I'll give myself a little bit of love, move on and carry on with my life. And then if you do that enough times, eventually you start to feel a little bit more comfortable being yourself and bringing your energy forward and staying on your side of the energetic line so that you can be aware of what other people are thinking, but you don't have to completely enmesh with it in order to keep yourself safe or take responsibility for it as if it were yours to try and displace it and do something with it, again, to keep you safe. So just to drive this point home one more time, it's not the empathy that's the problem. Too many people blame the empathy. They say they're too empathetic and blah, 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 but that's not it. It's the loss of your sense of self that's the problem. Empathy is an essential tool. Without it, it's hard to communicate. It's hard to really have loving connections with people. It's hard to understand what anybody's talking about without these mirror neurons and empathy and everything like that. So you don't want to become less empathetic. If you can be really sensitive and empathetic while holding your line, then you can become really skilled at utilizing your empathy in ways that matter. Because if you become really empathetic, you can sense things in your environment that nobody else can sense. It's just a matter of being able to put those things in action and not be overwhelmed by them. And that's what happens when you uncover your own energy, bring it forth and integrate it so that you can still be there to make sense of everything that you're sensing and act on it rather than be just overwhelmed and taken over by it. So I know this is big, but if you have any questions about this, I have a whole free Discord where you can come in, you can ask me all the questions you want. We've got an awesome community in there. It's completely free. There's going to be a link below. I've also got a free shadow integration course where we will give you journal prompts, glossary on terms in case I've said any words that don't make any sense. And we have also given you a free shadow integration introduction video course in there as well. So it's tons of free resources. They're all on my website. They're all in links below. And if you just have any general questions you want me to make videos on, as always, let me know and I'd be happy to do that. But I'm Chris Orozco. I love you and I'll see you next time.